Today's game, Infiltrator, was designed by one guy, Chris Gray, who went on to found Chris Gray Enterprises and later Gray Matter Incorporated before going defunct in 1997. In addition to Infiltrator, Gray and his company developed a few other licensed NES titles like Captain Planet and the Planeteers, Mad Max, Dirty Harry, and WWF King of the Ring. Infiltrator on the NES, however, is actually a port of Infiltrator 2. The original Infiltrator released on a number of computers and operating systems available at the time, like the Commodore 64, MS-DOS, Apple II, and the Atari 8-bit family. Infiltrator 2 came out a year later in 1987, but because the NES never got the first Infiltrator, the second one removed the number 2 in favor of simply Infiltrator. You don't really need to know what happened in the original to enjoy this one. So, let's see what's up. To start, you are greeted with a cutscene where you realize your name is Jimbo Baby McGibbets. And this guy is the villain. Already not what I expected either. To start, you can choose between the flying mission or the on-foot mission. This is especially weird since the flying mission is you flying to the on-foot mission, so in reality these could not be completed out of order, but I'm sure they did this so you could experience the two different modes the game has to offer out the gate. And it's a good thing they did, otherwise most players would never make it outside of the helicopter. In the flying mode you are piloting your trusty Gizmo DHX-3 attack chopper known as the Snuff Master, and it's freaking loaded with doodads. It has a turbine thrust, dual propulsion whiz-bang whirler engine, whiz-bang waster air-to-air heat-seeking missiles, anti-heat-seeking flares, anti-radar guided missile chaff dispenser, a whiz-bang whomper turbo booster, a communication system, and a silent travel option. Say what you will about this game, but Chris Gray was a bit of a whiz at naming stuff in this helicopter, and I'm here for it. What I'm not here for is the standard operating procedures he invoked on how to fly the thing. It will definitely require the manual to learn what all these things mean in the cockpit and how to use them, and I appreciate that everything you see here functions in the game. All of those options mean something, all of those lights mean something, and I'll take this time to point out that for an NES game in 1987, this pseudo 3D and immersive presentation is really good. But back to flying the chopper! I never really mastered this, but I was able to get by okay. You start by pressing Start, and this revs the engine to 2300 RPMs, and at that point you can press down on the D-pad to lift off. If you press up, you'll end the game immediately as you just launched your chopper cockpit first into the dirt. No bueno. So after you've lifted off, you can see the direction you're facing per the compass in the center, and at this moment it's nonsense. You have to press select or start to move the highlighted option to S for status, and now you see that number in the bottom left? You will need to exit this screen and then select R for radio and enter that number to give the chopper the heading it needs to get to where it's going. Was that necessary, Chris? So anyway, once the compass aligns, you have some direction. You can continue to elevate and start moving forward by pressing A and up. It won't be long before other aircraft start whizzing by you. Here's where some strategy comes into play. Try to have your radio, the letter R, highlighted so you can send a transmission first for them to identify themselves. Then, depending on what they send back, you reply with your own identification. You can reply as Overlord, and if the jet that whizzed past you is in support of you, they'll leave you alone. If you reply as Infiltrator, there's a good chance they'll fly back past you and try to attack. You can pinpoint which is which by their ID, and half of the IDs you come across will not attack if you reply with Infiltrator, and the other half won't attack if you reply with Overlord. If you get it wrong, they'll attack. Now, after you get their ID and you've guessed incorrectly, or not at all, at that point you need to have the weapon you want to use highlighted so you can try to shoot them before they shoot you. If they fire at you, there's no defending yourself, and if you take a bunch of hits, you might as well start over because the chopper can become inoperable pretty quickly. On top of that, you'll eventually need to land when you get to where you're going, and that is touchy too, so read up on the manual to avoid a bunch of frustrations on behalf of your own ignorance. I appreciate what Gray was going for here, but in the end it becomes a tedious and clunky mess that detracts from any possible fun. If you're able to master flying the Gizmo DHX-3, I'd have no problem issuing you a real pilot's license. But that's only half of the game. The other half is very different. Once on foot, you have an option to enter a few different buildings. This is true for each on-foot mission. You're basically tasked with locating things and you have to do it stealthily and under a time limit. Once you enter buildings, you want to try not to be spotted by the guys roaming around, but if you are, it's easy to dispatch them by spraying them in the face with some sleepy spray while you continue to ransack and look for items and terminals to interact with. As you search, you'll find all sorts of needless items like candy wrappers, sticks of gum, or soda cans. You can find a different colored suit that increases your stealth somehow, despite your upgraded suit looking like a blaze orange prison jumper and the original outfit looking more like the guys you're trying to hide from. There's a map at the bottom to show you where you've been already. It's clutch, as the layouts of these buildings are maze-like, and if you do get caught and need to repeat a part of the building, you'll want to know where you've been. For the most part, this plays as well as a stealth adventure on the NES can muster, but it's drawn out and tedious. If you make it through the mazes and collect what you're here to collect, and complete the mission, you're rewarded with doing it again, 2 more times. So in total, there are 3 flying and 3 stealth stages you need to finish to complete the game, but you'll have to do it with just 3 lives. Lives are lost pretty easily. Walking into the water, stepping on a landmine, running out of time, or crashing your chopper. That's not to say it's impossible, but this one will require some trial and error, and most of all patience on your part. Thankfully, there is a password system here, and they are only 4 characters long, so they're my kind of passwords. One of the more glaring parts of the game is the lack of music. Gray was going for that real feel, I guess, so mostly all you'll hear are alarms and the sound of your helicopter crashing into the ground. There's not much here for music. If for some reason you have a knack for this game and want more, there was a Worlds of Power novelization based on it. I've not read it myself, but it is pretty easy to find online, at least for now. The original game that was released before the NES game that I mentioned earlier in the intro was largely the same as this one. From what I can tell, it's still the same flying and stealth mission structure, except a little slower and less visually appealing. Well, that does it for Infiltrator on the NES. As always, pack your sleepy spray. Thanks for watching.